Good afternoon and hello from Resurrection Church. My name is Elijah Lovejoy. I am the pastor here at Resurrection Church, and I have decided to start a new video blog called Resurrecting Robin Hood. It's a play on the name of the church, Resurrection Church, but I've also felt for probably 2 or 3 months now that Robin Hood is a character in popular storytelling and legend going back to at least the 1200s, probably earlier, that needs to be rediscovered or re-explored today. So I want to explain in this video blog just briefly why I think Robin Hood needs to be rediscovered, and specifically the parallels between Jesus and Robin Hood I think are especially important today. So what is it about Jesus and Robin Hood that's parallel to each other and that needs to be rediscovered? Well, here's a short list that I've been just reflecting on. Number one, Robin Hood formed a community of the oppressed. He had people living in the woods with him that he was taking care of, people who were in debt, people who were sick, people who couldn't pay their taxes, and he took care of them. And Jesus did a very similar thing, and interestingly, David started his kingship in a similar way, on the run, taking care of people who were left out by society. Second parallel between Jesus and Robin Hood is that Robin Hood had a prophetic message. He was opposed to the power, the abuse of power by the Sheriff of Nottingham and by King John, I believe, was the one that was abusing his power in at least one of the stories. And he spoke out against that message and was opposed, hunted down, and persecuted for it. So Jesus, in a similar way, had a prophetic message. Robin Hood carries that same banner, so to speak. Robin Hood was also concerned for justice. He didn't just speak, he also acted. And Jesus, in much the same way, was concerned for justice. Social justice is a big theme today, so I think Robin Hood and Jesus tie that together in a way that's cohesive, coherent, and actually redemptive and productive. Interestingly, Robin Hood lived a fairly ascetic life, much like Jesus. I like asking the question, if Robin Hood lived in a mansion and kept 50% of what he stole for himself, would we still love Robin Hood? The knee-jerk reaction is no, I wouldn't like Robin Hood if he kept 50% of what he stole for himself and lived in a mansion. I love Robin Hood because he lives in the woods and he gives away what he steals to the poor. So there's something about Robin Hood's lifestyle that makes him a compelling character. And in the same way, there was something compelling about Jesus' lifestyle. It wasn't just his words, it was his lifestyle that makes us love him and causes him to be so compelling to us. For example, Jesus says, I have no bed and no house. Foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Jesus also sends out his disciples with no money bag, no staff, and no shoes. St. Francis repeated that example in the 1200s as well. And so there was something about how they lived that made their message powerful and compelling. You also have the 12 merry men surrounding Jesus, his 12 disciples, who are living off the land, taking grain from the field. So a lot of parallels between the ascetic lifestyle of Robin Hood, partly out of necessity. He was a hunted man, but also he seemed to enjoy living in the woods and playing with Little John in the forest and all that sort of thing. And Jesus, who did much the same thing. Jesus additionally was known for all-night prayer vigils, for long periods of fasting, and for sending out his disciples on adventures. So all more parallels with Robin Hood. Two final parallels that I think are important to explore between Jesus and Robin Hood. Jesus eventually lived as an outlaw like Robin Hood. He was a hunted man. The leaders of his own people were seeking to kill and destroy him, especially after he cleansed the temple and raised Lazarus from the dead. And he eventually went to Jerusalem knowing that his own death was imminent. And then finally and last, Jesus, by his own words and admission, came to plunder the strong man. Specifically, he's referring to the Satan or the devil there. He came to plunder him, to bind the strong man so that he could plunder his house and take back captive humanity to belong to God instead of belonging to the devil or being sons of the devil. So in a similar way that Robin Hood plunders from the rich and gives to the poor, Jesus plunders the powers, the principalities, and the devil himself so that he can give back to God what is owed to God. So another great parallel. So I invite you to join us. We'll perhaps do this once a week on this video blog, Resurrecting Robin Hood. And I invite you to join us as we plunder and hopefully build some community as we rob from the powers and give to the poor. Thank you for your interest, and leave a comment below if you would like to interact with some of these ideas.